but that company they handle merchant services all the time, so doing a chargeback.
What's going on here? That's weird.
They're not gonna fight.
Okay, so I just hit the button to go live. Is there a little bit of a buffer because they just? I hope not. Man, I'll have to go back and restart the stream or something like that because I was getting. That's weird. Okay, so I just hit the button to go live.
I'm not sure. On my cell, it shows it went live.
Yeah, no, it went live, but I was getting feedback from what we were talking about before it went live. So, I mean, granted, I didn't say anything that was, yeah. I didn't say anything that would give anything away or whatever, any personal information or anything like that. It's just weird that it was showing on the live playback. Man, I'll have to go back and I will have to look at the actual video itself to see if that's actually cutting it. Sorry for that distraction there, but welcome to the HUMANE Mind Live 107. And like I was saying, apparently it does a little bit of a buffer before you hit the button, so I'll have to keep that in mind in the future. I hope that's not the case, because, I mean, what I can see on my end may not be what people can see on the other end. So we'll check that out later. But welcome, so HUMANE Mind Live episode 107. The internet is for banning prawn. That's I don't know if you ever heard that. Was it Avenue Q, the internet is for porn song? But there's been something going around for the past week or two, and it's very bizarre because it's put a lot of people in a weird situation where people that were supporting the guys at the Daily Wire just a couple of weeks, like myself, are now on the opposite side from those guys in this discussion, namely Matt Walsh. So there's been a couple other people talking about this issue for almost a week now, but Matt Walsh has been the main one that I've been seeing, talking about not just restricting porn to adults only, but talking about banning it altogether because of the harm to children.
No, that's a dangerous place to go.
That's what I've been saying.
Anytime you make a blanket statement, we need to ban this completely because it's such and such harm to this one group, that can be expanded to so much more to where it becomes totalitarian. That's not. I thought he was against most of that stuff. I mean, I get it. Little kids picking that stuff or stumbling on the sites. I think even if it's free, maybe there's some sort of login or token if people wanted to look at free sites where you register your ID and where you live, and get a badge or something you can sign into.
Yeah, right now most sites don't have anything like that, and if they do, it's just a little checkbox that says, "Are you over 18?" Yes, and you could be 8, and you can click that checkbox, and they're in the clear, and there's no. So that part of that argument I can understand, and actually, Michael Knowles came out.
Vaping sites already do that because they don't want anyone under 18 buying their stuff.
Yeah, and that's a valid position to hold. And that's something that I would be in favor of. If there was some kind of regulation saying, hey, if you have a site that has this kind of material, you need an age gate on this material. So that way people who are underage for this type of thing, they can't access it. Right now, they can. That's a bit of a problem. I understand completely, and I agree with the argument that pornography is addictive. Pornography has detrimental effects that are not as obvious as, say, like drinking and drugs. There are psychological effects, and it is a long-term devastating to your social development, your relationships. I mean, there's been numerous studies on this. It's also been the leading cause of erectile dysfunction is porn addiction. One of the guests on Louder with Crowder was talking about this, and he's an atheist and a secular guy, and he and his wife run a psychological practice, and they began seeing trends with people that they were dealing with that had issues with erectile dysfunction and with their porn use. And they started forums, and all these people were coming together and talking about their issues, And they're like, well, the common denominator here is porn. And so then they started suggesting to their clients to wean themselves off of porn use, and voila, a physical issue started to alleviate as they reduced their porn consumption. And it's like, there's a direct tie between a physical detriment and the use of this, it's fine, it's normal, everybody does it sort of thing. It's like, yes, even people who aren't religious are acknowledging, okay, there are, what's the word, what's the phrase there? It's the unintended consequences to participating in this activity.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like having too much caffeine or smoking cigarette, any other addictive activity. Some people can handle it. Some people, it's not really going to do much, but there's a growing group of people that they're addicted. And since it's so easy to get a hold of, it's just more and more and more.
All right, so there's the Babylon Bee chimed in, and I was just before the stream started here I guess they posted this at 6:14. And so they said a porn addiction ended by new law that requires Matt Walsh's disapproving face to appear on all adult sites. Because he's been one of the he's been kind of the face of this on Twitter over the past couple of weeks. And I was actually surprised to see Joey Salads being kind of the more rational when it came to this. So Joey Salads, is a YouTuber known for making fake prank videos and basically kind of lifestyle videos where he flaunts his family's wealth, and apparently that's a YouTube career. But he's running for Congress, and his positions on a lot of these things are a little more conservative. Let's see. I don't have this quite brought up, but let's see.
It is a bit odd, because I do listen to some of the, not the podcast, but the YouTube videos afterwards of some of the Daily Wire guys, and Matt Walsh. He's definitely a religious guy, but typically he seems level-headed.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to find his tweet on this subject specifically, because he has been talking about this.
But this is the type of argument where there is a principle behind something, and then there is a potentially affected group, and you stand by the principle or go to protect the group if you think it's contrary to the principles you're supposed to stand on. So if we get into some sort of totalitarian banning state, what's next? I mean, they're already crying about censorship from big tech companies. This would be massive censorship.
Yeah. And
outright ban. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to go away overnight, and you're going to see black markets, because we already see black markets in not just pornography, but in prostitution. And
oh, yeah. I think you could see a lot of that on the rise, sexual crimes on the rise.
Yeah.
And it's too bad that it's infiltrated society like it has, but there's going to have to be a weaning off period to get people unaddicted to that.
But it's not going to be a government policy that does it. It needs to be a moral reawakening of the population.
It's societal awareness that, hey, cut it out, just like smoking. Everybody used to smoke back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. In restaurants, some people thought it might even be healthy for you. Doctors are recommending it for stress. And then society changed. By the mid-90s, pretty much everything was already starting to ban smoking. It's a societal awareness on the harmful effects. And society decides, you know what? You can still do it, but we're going to limit it so you're not hurting other people.
Yes. So
that's the problem. Two things.
So yeah, this is the tweet I was looking for from Joey Salads. It's he says, being against porn is conservative. Big government regulations ban is not a conservative solution. And I was like, yes. I'm like, that should be the position of most people on this particular view. It's like, yes, it is a bad habit. It's an industry that I can understand why it's as big as it is, but it shouldn't be that way. Like, I understand the appeal and all that sort of thing. There's a lot of people who get involved in it. There's a lot of people who are willing to pay for that sort of thing. So I kind of understand the appeal, but what I cannot fathom how this industry got to be so big without any kind of, or without some kind of let's see, not regulation or what's the without conservatives, I guess, fighting back against this, be like, whoa, 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 keep your kids away from this. This is a, but it's this industry that's been growing, and society as a whole, both religious and non-religious, have been participating in this. And that's, I was like, that's not a problem with the government or with the political system. That's a problem with the people in society as a whole, which that's that is a moral failing, not a legal failing. And yet Matt Walsh seems to be of the opinion this is something the law should be involved in rather than a moral solution.
I mean, there's a lot of other situations similar to that. People on food assistance can go out and buy soft drinks. They can go out and buy candy bars and loaded desserts. Government's already paying for that. We know there is no health benefits to that. Yes, it makes for a tasty snack, but especially for children, they don't need to get loaded up with sugar. We already know the health detriments. Diabetes is on the rise, like ridiculous levels here, even just in the U.S. and Australia. Why don't we have government banned M&Ms and Twizzlers and candy canes and dessert?
Well, actually, that's the Michael Bloomberg's stance on this. He banned soft drinks in New York because, they're bad for people and we need to protect people from themselves.
Yeah, that's not government's job. They should have learned their lesson back during Prohibition. If some people want it, they're going to get it. So if that's something that they're doing for themselves, but they're not hurting someone else, which that's why alcohol sales are very highly regulated. It's illegal to drive. You're caught drunk driving, you can wind up in jail. It's not the greatest, but it's there. They're legalizing pot, but all the other substances are illegal because those can cause some serious harm if you're out and about high on meth or cocaine or something.
There are issues dealing with other people, and that's what the main issue with
have a candy bar, that's your health problem. You want to have a cigarette, that's you. If you're an adult, and you want to go look at porn, that's up to you.
Yeah,
that's not the government's job to be your big brother. And
but so when you talk about cigarettes, there is a difference that we need to bring up as well. When you're smoking in public, there is secondhand smoke. But
correct.
When you are watching pornography, everybody involved is consenting to the act. Otherwise, that would be illegal. I mean, there's already laws in place, against people not consenting to being in that, such as revenge porn laws. I mean, everybody has to sign a waiver and be 18, saying, hey, they knowingly participating in
rape
this.
videos, underage videos, so stuff like that.
Yeah, those are already prohibited because there is a victim. But when it comes to pornography as in general, just, hey, two people had sex, they were willing to film it, and they were willing to release it to the public. People on the other end in the public are willingly consuming that content. At no point in any point in this transaction or this interaction is anybody unwillingly participating. So
correct.
That's the issue, is like, well, at that point, then the government cannot put its hands in there without creating victims.
Well, that's why with the cigarette stuff, pretty much almost everywhere indoors, at least here in Missouri, it's illegal to smoke inside. No businesses.
Yeah.
Restaurants. I think the only place that you might still be able to is casinos.
Casino.
And bars, I think.
Yeah, casinos, certain bars.
Illinois is it's banned indoors anywhere. They have outdoor designated spots. Even in the bar, you cannot. So I get that part.
Yeah.
They're protecting those who are unwillingly participating in secondhand smoke, and that I understand. That does include other people. So you go to your designated area where it's just smokers, people who are already participating, who it's fine with them. So there are laws that are already being set in states to protect other people because their rights are being intruded on where they don't want to participate, but they're unwilling.
Yeah.
at least in areas like that. But most of the other regulated substances, you can't buy it unless you're a certain age. You can't acquire it. You can't uh, be out in public causing a disruption and things that are just extremely detrimental and would put other people's lives in jeopardy, like other drugs,
Mm-hmm.
meth, cocaine. We brought that up. Those are banned.
Yeah.
So with
So
this in,
yeah.
maybe it should have some regulation, but not an outright ban.
So
So,
I've got this tweet pulled up from Michael Knowles where he says, "We regulate gambling, booze, tobacco, gambling, booze, and tobacco on the internet. You need to prove you're 21 to buy a pack of cigarettes online. You need an ID to buy a Playboy. Why is everyone so frazzled by the prospect of applying regs we have for cigarettes and nudie mags to internet porn?" And I don't have a problem with that. And a lot of
yeah,
people looking at this situation, because I mean, I'm kind of in the, I guess fighting on both sides on this, because I'm fighting against the people who are talking about regulations, which is what Matt Walsh is talking about, because he hasn't made this particular nuance. Michael Knowles has made this nuance, and I'm like, okay, this is a position I agree with him on this. Now, the difference between what he's proposing and what Matt Walsh has talked about is that there is an age restriction because minors cannot consent. They may want to look at porn, but they are not able to consent on a legal level. That is why a 20-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old in 364 days is still statutory rapes under the law, because they cannot legally consent to the act. That is the issue. Is we talked about willing participants and all involved, but if you are under the legal age for an activity, you cannot consent even if you would desire to. Even if you're saying, yeah, I want this more than anything, you cannot legally consent.
correct.
Yeah. So that is why it makes sense to have an age restriction on this activity. Because in the same way that you cannot participate in pornography if you are 17-year-old and 364 days, if you are not 18 or older, you cannot be in pornography on a legal or legally. By that same logic, you cannot legally consume pornography or volunteer to consume it. It's the same logic would apply in both situations. If you cannot consent to participate, you cannot consent to view. So that's where this is an area where the law can come into place, because somebody not being able to consent and being a participant in an activity would create a victim. Whether they view themselves as the victim or not is kind of irrelevant
Yeah.
at that point. In the same way that somebody who is drunk or under the influence of some kind of substance cannot consent to sex, it would make sense, like, oh, yes, that if they are unconscious and cannot consent to sex, even if they would want to participate in sex were they conscious, legally that is rape. Because the person could not willingly give consent, even if they had maybe wanted to. So that's granted. Granted, I might have just made that whole issue more confusing by that example, but it's the principle that this person could not consent at the time, therefore we must protect them until they are able to consent. So that's where, yeah, and so the other group that is kind of involved in this is Gab has been just outright insane on this. Oh, wait. I gotta leave this up before I forget. So let me maybe open that in a new window here. Because, okay, this is a completely unrelated story. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. I don't think I've got it pulled up. But I'll come back to that after I'm done here.
Yep, not seeing it on my end.
Oh. Yeah, because it's on the stream and not in the Hangouts. Oh, which makes me wonder, did I get the ability to... Nope. Unless I want to cast to somebody's Xbox One. So, Gab, and I have talked Gab up in the past because they promoted themselves as a free speech platform. The guy who runs Gab is supposedly pretty big on free speech and all of that. and promoted his platform, which had I think they raised over $2 million for their application when they were in crowdfunding. It was at least over $1 million, and this was when they were doing bulk of their fundraising in 2016, because they promised to be an open platform for anybody to produce their content and would not restrict it in the same way Twitter and Facebook have. And yet, this gabtrends.com, which is the official Gab Twitter page, they have been using this almost extensively. And right here, I've got this t-shirt that says free speech over free speech t-shirt. That's what they're selling to advertise their brand and their platform. And yet they have been talking almost non-stop all week about banning porn and their site not allowing that content. And I'm like, that's not what your original terms of service stated. The original terms of service, from what I understand, did not have any content that would be restricted, because the terms of service said anything that was, so long as it was legal. And in the US, pornography is legal. So they are doing exactly what they protest Twitter for doing. They protest Twitter saying, oh, they've got an ideological slant, and they're imposing their ideology upon people using their platform. And yet, here's Gab doing the same. And I was telling people, it's very, very frustrating. Because I was saying, like...
I understand having open platforms for people to communicate and just put out what they want. But the internet is a very large place, and there are children online. So if you're going to have potentially adult content, separate that off, do some sort of age filtering. You have to register for an account, prove you're over 18 or 21 for whatever the content is, and then say, we'll allow it. But if you post anything that doesn't belong in an adult, or is restricted to an adult channel in a general chat, you're going to be banned for a while, because that will break our rules. You can post it over here. We're just separating it from those who should not be consuming it, namely children. Same thing with like drug videos. If you want to have people smoking dope on whatever and post videos on it, it's legal in your state, fine. But that's also not something, 12-year-olds should be watching as a bunch of dudes sitting around smoking a joint. So if you're going to have an open platform, no, you just can't have it plain open. But at least set some guidelines and say, for the adult section, post whatever you want. That's what it's for.
That's
for the
not
general
what Gab's current position is.
As long as it's legal, but if they're underage, anything that is legally not attainable by underage, then they can't view it either.
Yeah, their current position is just ban it all. And the Andrew Torba, the guy behind Gab, the guy who's running this Gab account, he apparently has converted to being a Christian, although I'm not sure when that occurred in the time frame. But he's been promoting Gab for his ideology, and that's where I see a problem, because the original terms of service is anything goes as long as it's not illegal on the platform. That was the pitch made on the platform, and Minds has stuck true to that. Minds still allows any type of content so long as it's not illegal. The last I checked, that's part of their terms of service, and they've stuck true to that. Gab has changed their terms of service due to Torba's personal view or personal change, and that's...
Well, then there's a difference between them and Twitter.
That's the problem.
That's a slippery slope where they're just going to ban more and more that they find shouldn't be on or they don't want on their platform.
Yeah.
They're not keeping an objective stance that just says, this is this, and this is not illegal, so I don't like it, but I said it can be there.
And yeah, for me, that's a problem. Like, I am of the opinion, I do not like porn, I do not want porn, but if you have a platform that you are advertising as being an open platform for anybody to post their content, that is going to be It's going to include what you don't like. It's that that old adage. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. It's the
Yep.
same concept as I disagree with what you are doing on the platform, but I built the platform so that way you could do anything so long as it wasn't illegal. That's and like I was saying, it's like when they all that these platforms currently have is their current terms of service. There is nothing stopping Gab from changing their terms of service to being just as draconian, just as authoritarian as Twitter and Facebook.
Well, see,
There's
here's
nothing. Their platform allows for that.
and it is a difference of principles, right? The
Yeah.
U.S. is based off of, yes, Christian values. However, it goes a bit beyond that because they never wanted to establish a denomination. They never
Yes.
wanted to say, hey, we have one specific religion. This is a natural religion.
Well,
Because they understood that's going to exclude a lot of people.
yeah. And
There's going to be infighting between different branches of Christianity because one's better than the other, or one's not the truth. This one is the truth. Yeah, and they don't want that.
yeah. It's
But if you have the principle
also
of speech, you got to understand there's going to be bad speech in there. So do you stick with the free speech or do you stick with your ideology? And your ideology, if it's religious based, is going to be quite a bit more restrictive. And so, yeah, you're going to be excluding a lot of people. And it's not an open platform.
yeah.
Nobody goes into a church service and just starts spitting out a bunch of profanities and talking about drinking beer and smoking dope. That's not something you do at a church. Right? So their ideology is more protective. It is more of, trying to be, I guess, morally correct, but it excludes anybody who doesn't necessarily fall within that mindset. So it both principle, but if you're going to have an open principle such as free speech or, freedom of religion, you have to stick with that.
Yeah. And when the founders were framing the U.S. and when they're writing the Declaration of Independence and in a lot of their other writings, like letters to individuals, and the famous letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to that Baptist minister about the separation of church and state, because they could not establish Christianity as the official religion of the U.S. And the reasoning behind that is if you look at the founding of the U.S., who were the first major groups to come to the U.S.? Pilgrims. I mean, they were religious pilgrims, religious travelers. And what were they traveling for to the U.S.? Were they traveling? I mean, part of that was traveling to the U.S. to, be missionaries to the Indians or to the Native Americans or whatever term you want to use. I prefer Indians because that makes it easier to distinguish, but apparently that's a slur for whatever reason. Sorry for that little side tangent. But they were escaping religious persecution from the Catholic Church in the UK because a lot of them were Protestants. We have got Quakers, we've got Baptists, we've got Lutherans, we've got Calvinists. All of these people were willing to cross the ocean and enter a new country just so they could exercise their freedom of religion that was a different denomination from the dominant religion of the country they came from. And to establish a single denomination or Catholicism or some type of Christianity as the official religion would be spitting in the face of all those people who risked their lives. It'd be like, oh, yeah, you came here to escape religious persecution, and now that we won the Revolutionary War, boom, back into religious persecution, you can't escape it. And it's like, no, we came here to exercise freedom of religion, and in order for us to exercise our freedom of religion, we must allow other people to exercise their freedom of religion.
Correct. You cannot be that it's right for me but not for you, or I'm going to give these rules to you but it doesn't apply to me. It can't be that. It's either it applies to everyone or it does not.
Yes. So that's
fair.
Yeah. So for one of these platforms to declare themselves as, open, free speech and allowing for people to express themselves and freedom of religion, and then to impose their own ideology, to me that flies in the face of everything that this country was founded upon. And that's not something I can get behind. I can get behind a message telling people, hey, don't subscribe to this type of content. Do not consume this content. It's bad for your mind, it's bad for your health, and it's bad for your salvation. It is taking you away from God. That's things I can advocate for. But going to government to make sure that they can't do that, and that's contrary to that. But also, like, this is what it doesn't look good for Christianity, because this site said it was one thing, and as soon as it became popular, as soon as it became a viable platform, they changed their stance and are now saying something different. That makes it appear as if these people were lying to their original backers.
Or hypocritical.
Yeah. And for me, that's why I was like, I was trying to warn people 2 years ago, and I'm saying nothing in what these guys have done has made sure that their platform cannot fall victim to this. You are relying on the owners, on the people running it, to hold true to their word. The platform I was building, I had no control over it. It was decentralized on purpose. So even if I wanted to impose my own ideology on the platform, I could not. The platform itself, the architecture itself, could not restrict any particular type of content or any particular type of activity. The only thing in the system was for content to be restricted or to be removed from the site would be with an official legal document. That's how the system was set up. It was like, once something is flagged as potentially illegal or illegal content, it would be put in a restricted mode, and the only way to keep it in that restricted mode would be to upload a verifiable document as like, hey, like a court order or a police warrant, something along those lines. That was the plan. I never got that. I mean, granted, I never got any real interest in the platform, although that was my proposed solution. It was like, yes, there is content that should be restricted, although I don't get to put the button. I don't get to put the claim. I don't get to be the one to make that decision. The system had to be able to say, hey, is this legitimate? And go, because you can go and search court records. You can go and those are documents that you can access via the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. So if somebody says, hey, this is illegal, we've reported this to the FBI, you can be like, oh, hey, here's a case number. I can go on their various websites and through their APIs determine whether this is a legal document according to them, and the system bans that content based on that. There is no human interaction. There is no people going through and like, oh, I don't like this content. I don't. Yeah. It's like, hey, is this official or is this not? If it's not official, the content stays. That was my solution to the problem. I also had a solution where the platform would be divided into two separate areas, like a safe for all area and then a use at your own risk area. So content, when it was first uploaded, would be in that use at your own risk. And then when enough people interacted with that content and were saying, hey, this is safe for all ages, because I mean, it's community built, where the community I outlined all of this, and maybe this is not worth getting into because the platform is kind of DOA, or it was not even dead on arrival. What's the the project was stillborn.
The platform specifically, but more the ideas that there are ways to change to have an open platform that is legitimate, and to keep out of hands of people who base decisions off of ideology rather than a standard principle. Yeah.
So the other system that I had in place was, when content was originally uploaded, it would be in this free-for-all area that you had to have a particular type of account to get into. You could not just, like, you couldn't just be a child saying, hey, I'm 18. It's no, for this particular type of area, you would have to have a registered account and proof that yeah, you accept the risks of possibly seeing illegal content, possibly seeing something that you, but there would be enough people willing to go into that type of content and verify safe for all ages content because we had a rewards program. The more you interact with the system, the more you help us build the community, the more you help us sort out the content, the better your odds of winning the prize pools. So the more you interacted, the more you commented on stuff, the more you tagged and say, hey, this is a great video for family, this is a cartoon, things like that, the more people interacting with that content, once it reached a certain threshold, it would be moved from the unknown or the at your own risk category and placed in the safe for all ages. Because it has to meet, hey, 50,000 people interacted with that and 50,000 said this is good to go. Or, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is. That's something I would have to work out. But that sort of system, because it's rewarding every time you interact with it, people would willingly go in there and be like, hey, I'll sort through this. I'll look at all the new content or as much as I can. And like, hey, this is good to go. This is good to go. No, this video is trash. This video is terrible. They showed some. I don't know if that's illegal or not, but I mean, it looked like they were doing, torturing animals. You could tag that video in a certain way, and you would willingly do that because there's a financial incentive to do so. Right now on YouTube and all that sort of thing, there's no financial incentive to report a video. There's no financial. I mean, I guess aside from copyright claims, but if you're being a part of the YouTube Heroes program, what's your reward? Nothing. You just get a pat on the back. Hey, good job. Whereas our system would be kind of like, hey, if you're helping us police our program, there's an incentive to do that. So we would have people, they could probably make a decent living doing nothing but making sure content is being curated properly. I mean, maybe curate is probably the wrong word, but properly filtering. So, and it wouldn't be a single individual filtering content because this would be a distributed. So maybe you think this particular content is inappropriate, but if enough other people are like, no, this content's perfectly fine, that becomes a system. That would be a true democracy when it comes to this type of content, that is an area where I'm okay with a democracy.
Video gets enough views and it's got a certain percentage saying it's safe, then most likely it's safe.
Yeah, that's to me. I thought that those were adequate solutions for those problems, but I guess not enough other people agreed with that. So, maybe eventually once I become a trillionaire, I'll just start it myself. But so there was, oh man, I guess there was more than one thing in the news, and I guess I didn't write it down. And it's kind of slipped my mind. But it's already almost 8 o'clock. So the other thing, while we're talking about Gab, this occurred to me. Dave Rubin launched his own platform, or platform-ish, called Locals.com. He did a little broadcast last week, was talking about it. There's not much information on it yet, and right now it is a invite only. So they've done their initial kind of beta soft launch where he's invited people personally and directly. Now they've kind of opened it up for people to apply to be admitted. But again, there are problems with the platform. First, it's not really a platform. It is more of a Patreon alternative. But unlike Patreon, where anybody can sign up for an account, you do have to get allowed in to the site. So apply and then get accepted. But also you have to have a certain threshold of subscribers. So if you're starting out your new platform, or if you're starting out your content, you don't have any subscribers yet, and you're just trying to get something off the ground, Locals is not a good solution. Because you have to have an established audience and just desiring a way to monetize and communicate with them. And for that, it sounds like Locals has that covered. In that, his promise to the people, although I haven't seen how he plans on doing this or he didn't go into the details of how the software would allow for this, but he has said you own all your content. So you join locals, you post videos, your comments, your contacts with your subscribers, all of that is yours. When you leave, if you leave locals for whatever reason, you keep all of that. That's not maintained by locals. The other thing he was offering is if you are a large enough member of locals and you apply for it, you can get a custom-made application for you. They would basically build you an app on Apple and help you get it launched and all that sort of thing, and that would be how you would reach your people. So even though it would be under the banner of locals, it would be your own consolidated network.
A hub for content creators.
Yeah.
To commingle and be able to have a more stable place without fear of just getting shut down because YouTube contacted Patreon and said, hey, shut them down or whatever.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's got a lot of good tools, and it sounds like something that would be perfect for people who are already established. Tim Pool made a video about it, and he said, nah. But other people I could see going over to that, like maybe Sargon of Akkad, Lauren Chin, formerly Roaming Millennial. People like that might find them like, hey, here's a way for me to monetize my content without going through Patreon, without giving Patreon any money. Dave Rubin has said he's not making any money off of the platform. This is all tools that he is, put money in for his own personal benefit, and he's making them available to everybody else. Granted, there's probably, I think the company is taking a percentage and all that sort of stuff, but he personally is not taking a salary off of that. He's relying on his own efforts to build an income. So I was like, oh, those are steps in the right direction. The only problem is if you are trying to build your brand, this is not the solution for you. And that's why Tim Pool said, no thanks. It sounds okay, but it's not for me. And he's a bigger creator. He could benefit from something like locals. But he's saying he's sticking with Minds and BitChute because they give a lot more interaction, and you can help grow your audience, whereas something like locals, not so great for growing an audience. Great for communicating with an existing audience, great for monetizing your content, not so much for growing your brand. Whereas Minds and BitChute still allow for that. Alright, so, I don't have much else on that. That was kind of while I was thinking about Gab, I was like, oh yeah, that happened this week. Okay, so there's one more story I want to cover before we get to the Communist Manifesto, and I'll have to update the show notes or whatever to include all this, but there was an art exhibit. I've got this pulled up. I don't think I sent it to you on a Hangout, but let me send that to you real fast. There was an art exhibit of a banana duct taped to a wall that sold for $120,000. So, people are talking, like, I guess maybe I should give the whole story before giving my take on it. So,
$20,000.
Yeah.
Not million.
120,000, yeah. So, but banana taped to an art house gallery wall. Somebody was willing to pay $120,000 for it. A random dude comes in, rips the banana off the wall, and eats it. So this was already making news because of the $120,000 for a banana duct taped to a wall, which is just absolutely absurd. Dude walks in, eats the banana. Okay, more of a story. Third guy scrawls Epstein didn't kill himself on the wall where the banana used to be.
That whole story is just stupid. What?
Dude, it is ridiculous, and if this was planned, it is genius. If that was the goal...
If the guy who ate the banana is going to be charged with like theft or destruction of property for $120,000?
I have no idea. I hope it was all staged from the very beginning.
Well, I mean, it's gotta be. Who would be stupid enough to pay $120,000 for a banana and duct tape to the wall?
Yeah, because you're
You,
like, yeah, because that
you
got
just bought.
attention on it, and then the guy coming and stealing it grabs more attention, and then a guy scrawls in lipstick, Epstein didn't kill himself, on the wall, and security guards are rushing to cover it up, and they put something over it, and but you're like, dude, if that was the actual meaning of it was the hey, we'll put this out there, and how do we get as many people to pay attention to this as possible? Dude, that's how you do it.
Because why would an art gallery just let you duct tape a banana to the wall?
I don't know.
You can't. You can't take the wall, so all you have is the banana and the tape. For $120,000, that's literally like $1 worth of supplies.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, that seems entirely staged. This seems to be performance art from beginning till end. And
if it's a real banana, it's gonna spoil. It's not like
Yeah.
you can buy it or put it somewhere else. It's gonna turn brown, get fruit flies. It's not a permanent exhibit. So
yeah,
it just sounds hilarious. Like, why?
if this was all organic and not planned from the beginning, just yeah, burn it all now. That there is no hope for humanity. If this was staged, this was brilliant.
Crazy series of yeah.
That's what I'm leaning towards. This was staged, and it was a criticism of art itself, like modern art nonsense.
The whole avant-garde
Yeah,
high society, so you don't understand it.
yeah. Oh, this is it's art. It's above your head. You wouldn't get it. That it seems to be making fun of that while also putting the Epstein didn't kill himself message out there and making that headlines. If that was the goal from the beginning, bravo, sir. Or sirs, or whoever was involved. Whoever is, yeah. I hope that's the case, because all of this being just random people kind of,
So,
what's that, standalone complex. If this was standalone complex type stuff, we've had a good run. Time for humanity to go out.
on a somewhat related note, I know that's a meme, and I've seen that's comments on practically every YouTube video now. I've seen it kill himself pops every 2 hours on popular videos. If the general public has a strong belief that that's true, and yet nothing's being done about it, what does that mean? As in, the case is dropped because he's dead, but I know Michael Knowles said there was a book that just came out from 2 or 3 reporters that have been building up information for years, and they came out just a couple of days ago, and they're saying he ran a blackmail ring. That's prostitution was intended for blackmail of high-profile individuals. He had his fingers all over Hollywood, all over government, Central Intelligence Agency, people in Israel, people in Ukraine, Russia, like everywhere. He was everywhere. Doesn't that just kind of paint a clear picture that there is an elite group of people out there who feel they can get away with whatever they want, do whatever they want, participate in criminal rings, and then just blow it all away when someone gets a whiff of it that shouldn't have. Epstein gets caught, charged with something, put in jail, and they're like, oh, end it.
Yeah, well, when all of this first came out, that was how people were speculating he made his billions, was off of blackmail. That was speculation. Now there is somewhat more substantial proof on that. And you're like, yeah, so at this point, those articles coming out and the book coming out is just confirming what we already assumed, because there's no hedge fund, there's no nothing. And yet people are giving him $1 million mansions Hey, Epstein, you're a good buddy. Here's this $1 million home for no reason.
Yeah, I got a couple $1 million penthouse in New York.
Yeah, nobody knows. Nobody can point to how he got his money. Although people are claiming that he's an investor. An investor in what? Like the FCC has no tracking of his investments. Like, wait, it's the SEC, right? Security Exchange Council. Yeah, they have no monitoring of any financial thing. He just has money in his accounts, and people keep giving him money. There is no proof of him actually investing anything. Like Berkshire Hathaway, the Warren Buffett. Yeah, they've got all kinds of documents about how he made his billions off of investing. There's entire books about his Epstein. Nothing. There should be some kind of paper trail that somebody could point to and be like, okay, here's how he made his billions, and then he just used his billions to finance. So, yeah, that's Epstein.
But
No,
a guy like that, and all of the higher,
yeah,
rich, I guess, upper class people or prominent individuals around the world, he's been known to, I guess, be more than acquaintances with, have multiple social interactions.
mm-hmm.
That just seems really fishy.
Oh yeah, like, and that's why it's like, yeah, most people are saying that's how he got his fortune, was blackmailing people, and me personally, I think he had something to do with intelligence agencies, CIA and FBI, and I think they put him up to it, and they financed him, and he was part of their way that they compromised assets.
I think so. He was the guy that could go in, get in, be the cool party guy, show him an underground lifestyle, get all these high profile people in, and then now they're blackmailed, and now they can be monitored, they can be tracked,
Yeah.
they can be used for whatever intelligence purposes. I mean, I don't know about the intelligence community anymore. That just seems like an underground, massive cabal of people trying to rule everything.
Yeah.
I don't even think the United States has control of it anymore, even of our own intelligence.
I argue that we never had. Ever since their establishment, we lost control of them the very first year they were established.
Well, you've heard just the impeachment hearings and Schiff producing phone records of which they should have never had.
Yep.
Still illegal tapping and bringing that out, just saying, "Up, we've got evidence." Same shady business they were doing with Trump before he even became president. And yet we're just supposed to accept that that's the way it goes, and they're above the law. And Schiff is above the law, I guess.
Yeah.
He creates the law now.
Yeah. So there's a there's a lot of. I mean, granted, it all goes into conspiracy theory and speculation, but there's a lot of stuff that even just what we know and can confirm and what we have proof of. I mean, we know that. What's his name? We know that the first. Who's the first?
Mafia. Yes, there are Russian mafias, and there are small branches in a lot of major cities.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who they are exactly. You may understand there's some dirty dealing coming out of a restaurant. That's along the same levels of conspiracy theory here.
Yeah,
you know what's going on. You know certain players.
Yeah.
But we don't have the access or all the detailed information to pin anything down concrete.
Well, we do have some facts, like the first head of the FBI. What was his name? I keep thinking Roosevelt. That's not correct. Hoover, right? J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
He had blackmail documents on almost everybody in politics. Like, this is stuff that was known. Hey, this guy, well, I mean, it's known that he dressed up as a woman, or used to be like a transvestite sort of thing, and he had compromising photographs of presidents and vice presidents and senators and House of Representatives. And like, yeah, that's the very first head of the FBI, and he's got compromising material on not just criminals, but people in our politics, like heads of state. And you're like, well, that was the first guy? And you think that, oh, well, he's out of there. There's no way that the next guy couldn't do the exact same thing. What?
Or the fact of what compromising material does he have? Aren't these people supposed to be trustworthy? They're the ones elected to be put in charge of passing legislation, helping to run the country. What kind of compromising material is out there? Why is that even there?
Yeah, why does that material exist? And why is this guy the guy who has it? Like, that's a lot of power for somebody who's supposed to be under the control of the executive branch. And you're like, but if he's got leverage over the people who are ordering him around, they can't really order him around, can they? Like, oh, hey, you do something that I don't agree with, this goes public. That's more leverage than you don't do what I agree, or you don't do what I say, I'll fire you. What? That's all you got? Is you can fire me as director of the FBI? I can ruin your entire life. I can get fired from the FBI and I'll be fine. You, if the dirt I have on you goes public, your life is over and possibly going to jail, possibly criminal prosecution. I mean, granted, but yeah, you're toast. That's a lot more leverage than I can fire you.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, and there's all kinds of connections with CIA, like the whole gun running in Benghazi thing. That's public knowledge that we can prove the CIA was responsible for the Benghazi attack. Yeah, the Fast and Furious program. Oh, wait, we lost guns and oh yeah, by the way, Benghazi, we were running guns through the embassy, the U.S. embassy, and that's public knowledge. That's not conspiracy stuff. we've got evidence of that. And you're like, that's the CIA. No one went to jail over that. Nobody. And they ran interference for Clinton on that. And I'm like, dude, and you think the CIA, that's one of the biggest scandals we've had in most recent history? Nobody went to jail over that, and 4 Americans lost their lives, including an ambassador and a senator. Right, wait, no,
Yep.
it was... Ambassador Stevens... Wait, wasn't there a senator there as well, or did he make it out? I know it was the ambassador, 2 bodyguards. I don't remember the 4th guy. I want to say that was a senator, but I might be mistaken on that. But at least 4 Americans lost their lives over that. Something that we can prove the FBI, or not the FBI, the CIA had a hand in. Nobody, nothing. No penalties.
Information officer, an ambassador, and 2 CIA operatives.
Okay, so the senator, I think, was wounded but made it out, because there was a senator there during that. I forget the name. Or maybe I'm confusing things, but yeah, so it was Ambassador Stevens and 3 others. But yeah, that's huge. Nobody went to jail over that. Not one person. And interference for the one of the main players, the Secretary of State at the time, who was at the embassy when it... You're like, ugh. Yeah. So, and people are like, oh, no, CIA, they're on our side. FBI, they're on our side. And I'm like, it doesn't occur to you that they might be compromised if they can get away with this sort of stuff that we know about? What are they getting away with that we don't know about?
Even just recent activities, this whole impeachment circus.
Yeah.
They're trying to nail him on a stupid phone call, of which, who cares if it was a quid pro quo? Nothing was carried out. Nothing was even stated in a phone call, hey, you're not getting your money till you do this. That wasn't even implied.
Yeah, although Biden directly said that. You're not getting your money unless you do this.
$1 and had their state prosecutor fired. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that would release that $1 billion to them. Trump released it with nothing happening.
Yeah.
Other than what's his name? Man, now I'm forgetting that president's name for Ukraine.
Shokin? No. Shokin was the prosecutor. Zelensky.
Zelensky. Yeah. Right? So he just had Zelensky saying, yeah, I'll see what I can do. We're going to go take a look at some old cases and see if we can weed out some corruption, see if there was any corruption. It sounds like he's trying to do his job properly. The reason he got elected and why they didn't go with politicians, they went with an actor. Same reason Trump got put in office, because people are just tired of these dirty dealings.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this whole circus, yeah, he's pressed, and they don't really have anything on him. They just spent 2.5 years, multi-million-dollar investigation, and found nothing. In fact, what they did prove is that the DNC was involved.
Yeah.
With foreign interference. And
And
nothing.
they also proved that Clinton, oh, by the way, she was working with foreign agents to try to undermine the election.
So exactly what they blamed him for. The DNC and Clinton was doing it, and yet there's nobody talking about that. Nothing's gonna happen ever. She's covered. They're all covered. DNC's fine. Illegal wiretapping. Obama's fine. No one's asking, hey, maybe we need to go look into other dealings since that seems a bit fishy. Nope. Instead, we're going to focus on the one guy trying to clean stuff up. But I think that's why they're attacking him so bad. They need to get him out of there because he's not under their thumb. From what I have heard, excerpts from the book and stuff, Trump was known to have been around Epstein at parties, social events.
Now, there's video clip on NBC.
Nobody has any proof, and eyewitnesses who claim other high-profile individuals did engage in potential illegal activity said, no, Trump didn't do anything. He was just at the parties.
Yeah. There were a few accusations against Trump from anonymous sources that disappeared.
Yeah. There was the one about the girl, I don't know if she was a waitress there or something like that, but then she said, no, I don't ever remember Trump being there, and it wasn't him, it was somebody else.
Yeah. There was one. So there was two of these where. So one of them was, made these accusations about Trump at Epstein and at a party and all that sort of thing, anonymous. So yeah, like you said, there was one case where the woman said, "Oh no, I never met him." The other one originally said, "Oh yeah, it was definitely Trump and all that sort of stuff," but then later recanted and said, "Well, I didn't realize it was Trump until I saw him on The Apprentice." And you're like, what? So you didn't realize it was that guy, one of the most famous people in the world. Like, I could understand being 13 or whatever and not realizing it, but it's like decades after and only when he's running for president that you decide, oh yeah, that was the guy. What? Because that accusation didn't come out until his presidential run, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't recognize him, and then I saw an episode of The Apprentice. I'm like, what rock have you been living under?
Yeah, well, I mean that all got dropped as well.
No, yeah, so both of those cases were dropped, and you're just like.
So I'm thinking they were trying to get him in, and Trump's a smart enough guy to say, you know what, I'll hang out, I like to socialize, but I'm not getting tangled in this junk.
Yeah,
he's got his own smaller scandals.
And that's the other thing is people assume every party Epstein threw had some kind of illegal something or other going on. That's not how you rope people into this kind of activity. That's like if
you socialize and then you ask them if they want to attend something else more privately.
Yeah, and if you think about gang initiations, they don't start people off with murder. They start people off with small petty crimes, build them up, and then eventually get to that point when it's like, oh,
right.
Now in order,
go drink beers, go just do whatever, chill, become friends, buddy, and then hey, you wanna go do something else?
Yeah.
And then you slowly build up what it is, the activities you're engaged in.
Yeah. If gangs operated by you're thinking about joining our gang? All right, start murdering somebody today.
That guy, want to join?
No, gangs don't do that. They give you the in for a penny, in for a pound type of approach, and that's what happens at these parties. It's sure there's casual acquaintances where hey, maybe there's drugs or something along those lines, something kind of, and then once they wait till somebody's already a little bit compromised to bring them into the full thing. So even if Trump did attend one of these Epstein parties, it's not likely that he engaged in anything illegal to be asked to join anything deeper. That's my take on it. That might be incorrect. He might be a corrupt, evil, horrible pedophile and just really good at hiding it. Like, so good at hiding it that no one knows about it, and even people who have the inside scoop and who are willing to are like, oh yeah, no, we got nothing on him. Like, people who would be champing at the bit and people who'd be champing at the bit for some kind of leverage over Trump are like,
I thought it was chomping at the bit.
No, it's champing. Chomping sounds better, but it's champing.
Well, I just pictured the bit was that metal bar in the horse's mouth, and so they're chomping on it.
It's a stupid phrase.
Yeah, it is.
The actual phrase is champing, but it has become chomping because that makes more sense. But anyway, completely irrelevant fact, or completely irrelevant trivia. All right, let's get into the manifesto here because it's already almost 8:20, and I do trying to end the stream around 9. Oh, that's the other. I guess before I do say that, YouTube has changed its policies, so this may not be something we're able to do on YouTube in the future. They have, I don't know if you've been familiar with that, but they've been enacting policies where they're like, yeah, if your content's not generating money for us, we're just gonna cancel your channel. So they announced that a couple of weeks ago. And my channel has done absolutely nothing since it started, so it's only a matter of time before they start curbing this kind of content and just kicking it off of YouTube altogether. From a business standpoint, I understand completely. They're trying to make money, and my content doesn't generate any money for them. I'm not monetizing any of it. I think I've only gained like 2 subscribers in the past year, so I'm not generating any traffic flow for them. If that occurs, I might try DLive. I'm looking into DLive. I don't know how exactly that works. I know it's a streaming service. I don't know if it's actually stored anywhere. If not, I can try to record these videos on, on Streamlabs or on OBS here, and then. So I basically record these on my computer, and then after they're done recording, upload them to BitChute or something along those lines. So that might be the case. But, we'd still do the Hangouts and stuff. It just may not be for anybody other than ourselves. Actually, that's what it is right now. It's just you and me for the most part. I've invited a couple of people on here to try to discuss communism with me, but They haven't accepted the offer. They're willing to show up in my comment section for videos that are 2 years old and tell me why they're all wrong and in bad faith. Not so much willing to debate with me. And I'm like, all right. So let's start with Section 3. And like I said, Section 3 is a bit shorter, I think, but this is only a few pages, right? Like maybe 4 pages.
3, 4, 5 or 6. Well, it depends if you're counting front and back.
Yeah, and then the last section is just 1 page, so. Alright, so socialist and communist literature. Alright, I don't have any notes on the whole first page. I mean, if you've got something there that you want to talk about, but I didn't have anything highlighted from this feudalism socialism, or feudal socialism.
Not really. I mean, I guess this is more an in-depth of the beginning of chapter, or the first section.
Yeah.
You're talking about literature on different forms of socialism, and so feudal socialism, what kind of like a commune?
Yeah.
Like an old commune, a monastery, something like that. Just the basic, everyone has their job.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't really have much because that was already covered in the first section.
And it talks about clerical socialism and feudal socialism, and this reminded me of kind of like Jamestown. So even though they didn't call it socialism at the time, that was kind of the idea. Was they had a centralized pool of money. I mean, well, not necessarily money. It was a centralized, like a storehouse where everybody would, they were all farming, and they would put their goods in this storehouse, and then whenever somebody needed something, they would just take it out of there. And they thought that they could, have this community and exist like that, and that was kind of part of their original charter for Jamestown, was, hey, this is how we're going to run our society. And then that same year, they saw that they were running out of food, they were running out of supplies, and a lot of people in history were blaming it on harsh winters and an environment they weren't used to.
The poor management.
Yeah, which is so if it was harsh winters and an environment they weren't used to, John Smith coming up and saying he who doesn't work doesn't eat, or sorry, wait, was it John Smith or was it the other guy?
Standish.
Bradshaw.
Oh.
Oh man, I gotta double check. It was one of those two. Sorry. Yeah, I think it was John Smith. Yeah, John Smith quoting from the Bible. It says, "He who doesn't work shall not eat." And granted, even after he declared that, people who were sick and people who were elderly didn't have to work; they were still provided for. But everybody who was able and able to work had to work, and that's when you see, oh, they were able to survive, and they had so much more that they actually celebrated their excess, which leads to one of the first examples of Thanksgiving in the United States, sort of thing. And it's like that was feudal socialism.
About that, I guess we can have a brief discussion on it. But the thing that doesn't make sense about that type of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you take socialism, like that feudal socialism, to its smallest level, which would basically be a family unit,
mm-hmm.
right? It's a contributed pool, husband, wife, children. The children aren't working; they're not out earning money.
Yeah.
So it's husband and wife contributing, but they can assign chores and allot some housework to the kids, so that where they're contributing.
Yep.
But it's all piled in to provide for everyone.
Yes.
But there is a duty for the parents to ensure the well-being of the children and to help them grow so they can be productive adults. As that grows larger, the only thing that's going to determine whether a certain procedure, a certain process, a certain crop, a certain whatever should remain, is this viable, is through supply and demand. And the only way you can actually measure supply and demand is through an exchange of value.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're working doesn't mean it has any value. And if it has no value, you're not actually helping. You're not contributing to this socialist society. So you can be working your rear off doing something nobody needs. But the true way to find that out and weed it out is through capitalism.
Yep.
You work and provide a service, so you're paid money. People want the service, they'll pay you. If no one wants the service, find a different job. You grow this crop, you go to sell it, nobody buys it, don't sell that crop anymore. Go raise a different crop. It's the easiest way to see what other people have and choose a value. And then that's what gets exchanged around, via money or currency, is that exchange in value. But it helps you find what is profitable, what does work, what is in demand. And that's what pushes forward technology, increased processes, streamlining. But without that, that's part of why Jamestown, with this social or feudal socialism, was failing, is because, we have crops, we all need food, but how do you know that crop's the best one? What if most people aren't eating that, so they went out and picked all the good crops? How do you know how much people are supposed to get based off their work? How do you ration that out depending on what they've contributed? Don't know.
Yep, and it leads to all kinds of problems. So not only are you spending your time and effort, but you don't know how to distribute this. So there's I mean, granted, I'm just kind of rehashing what you'd said, but it's one of those things that prices and capitalism helped solve those issues. So going back to before capitalism existed, you're getting rid of the solution to these problems that aren't readily apparent.
Yep.
So, all right. So I do have a highlight here on this last paragraph of section A. So nothing is easier than to give Christian aestheticism a socialist tinge. Aestheticism? Is that how you pronounce that word? Okay. Has not Christianity declaimed any private property against marriage, against the state? Has it not preached in the place of these charity and poverty, celibacy and mortification of the flesh, monatistic life and mother church? Monastic? Okay.
Yeah.
And he says, Christian socialism is but the holy water with which the priests consecrate the heart burnings of the aristocrats. Wow. So again, this his criticism of religion and his disdain for it kind of show out in this. But let's break this down. If I mean, you started to say something there. I want to make sure. I was just kind of reading the whole paragraph, but
That's why I brought up that monastery,
mm-hmm.
because that is kind of has a similar outline. However, their goals are different. They're not there for monasteries aren't set up to necessarily provide new technology and process. It's basically a way to humble one's life down, and they all have a main principle. A very similar ideology or belief, which is why systems like that would work. The ultimate goal is to preserve the word of God and transfer and spread it. That was their whole purpose of, say, a monastery or a commune like that. And then they would have guys who grew crops just for sustenance. They weren't out trying to make a massive profit. They grew what they needed. They made what they needed. They were kind of self-sufficient. But that was their main goal, is to live a humble life in service to God, transcribe the Bible, make copies of it, so that way they could be distributed to other monasteries and they could be of service to other regions. They had a specific goal. Just general society, your goals don't necessarily mean mine, or they're not the same as mine.
Yeah.
Unless you're of somewhat of a hive mind, then that's different than just regular socialism or what he's comparing.
So the other thing that he's overlooking that should be fairly obvious is because he's talking specifically. I mean, it sounds like, granted he's talking about some other institution, but it sounds like he's mostly talking about the monastery life. So priests and nuns and monks and that sort of thing. Those people opt into that willingly. They understand. They're like, yes, this is what I want to devote my life to. I dedicate my life to this, and they choose to get involved in that.
Correct. There's no children into that. They're all put in an orphanage, and those kids can run off and go live a normal life when they grow up, or they can choose to join the monastery. But they didn't raise kids and say you're going to live as a monk.
Yeah.
That's why they practice celibacy. Well, most of them.
Yeah. That's a whole separate conversation. But when it comes to his vision for communism, anybody who disagrees with communism, they see the gulag or they get kicked out, or
they're enemy of the state.
Yeah, he was saying, well, we need to make sure that everybody participates in this, which is why he was talking about eroding the family and replacing it with state-run education. It's like, well, if people just thought this was the only thing they could do, then people would do this. And it's like, that's the only way your vision of society works is if people have no other choice but to participate in your version of socialism. That's the difference that he's that's not important, that's trivial. And I'm like, no, that's everything, is whether a person chooses to devote themselves to that or whether somebody is forced into that. And there's that phrase that old adage. It says, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And yet socialists don't quite, that message doesn't quite ring for them. It's like, oh, wait, if somebody is forced by law or by society, they're going to pretend, or they're going to go through the motions, but they don't actually believe it. And I guess this kind of ties back to the whole porn thing, is if somebody's actively seeking out porn, yeah, they may do everything to stay within the legal, but in their own time, in their personal time, they're going to go out and seek and try to do it in the shadows. They're going to, because they're not convinced what they're doing is wrong, so they're going to continue to do it and just make sure that they cover their tracks and make sure nobody knows about it. That's because they are of the same opinion still. They haven't changed, even if the laws change. They just go underground. All right, so that's how are we doing on time? All right, I think we may get through a couple of pages instead of only getting through a couple of paragraphs. All right. So next, I've got something here in paragraph 2, but if you want to, is there anything on paragraph 1 that you wanted to bring out? Hello?
No.
Okay. So next thing I've got kind of highlighted here is, oh, maybe there's, let's see. Oh, that's the other thing, is he says that is Christianity. That's the other point I wanted to make about, going back to point A, is he was talking about monasteries and priests and things like that as if they are all of Christianity. And I'm like, nope, they're a very small subset of Christianity, because the majority of Christians get married, have children. They don't disavow private property. That is a very small subset. But I'm not sure why he said, oh, that's Christianity. And I'm like, nope, that's similar to the Ninevites, right? Or is it Ninevites? No, the Nazarenes. Yeah, similar to the Nazarenes. The Nazarenes were a small subsect, a sect of Judaism. They were not all of Judaism, so you can't point to them as being like, oh, see, that's what it means to be a Jew. You never cut your hair, and you can't touch anything that's dead, and what are some of the other restrictions? You can't drink wine. As the Nazarene vows were Samson. So, and you're like, you can't look at Samson and say, oh, that's what all Jews believe. Like, nope, it's not how this works. So he is kind of making it seem as if that's what Christianity. Hey, in order to be Christian, that you have to disavow private property and not marry and and let's see, and kind of live in a monastery. And I'm like, no, that's only those specific people. So that's not all of Christianity. There are plenty of Christians who had private property, and there's plenty of Christians who were very wealthy, like Joseph of Arimathea, like wealthy enough to buy the land or the tomb of Jesus, right? So wealthy enough to buy large sections of land, didn't give them up and make them public property. He still owns things. So there's this misconception from a lot of people is that Christianity. Christianity started socialism. I'm like, there is a lot of giving to charity voluntarily, and a lot of pooling resources. There is not a whole lot of give up everything and not own anything, because then the apostles would have had no place to live. When they were going around and preaching the gospel, they lived at the houses of other Christians. All right. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry. It's just so the first section 3 is actually split into 2 parts. So it's called Socialist and Communist Literature.
Yeah.
This is called reactionary socialism, as in he's pointing out socialist appearances that were actually still causing the rise of bourgeoisie and proletariat, but had a socialist facade, as in they were claiming it's for the betterment of everyone, but in the shadows it was still aristocracy manipulating those below to build that upper and lower class of society. So with the feudal socialism,
which is kind of like pot meat kettle, like, right?
Yeah, he's claiming, there was something called feudal socialism where the aristocracies were worried about basically the businesses and merchants kind of growing up and catching up with the rest of the aristocracies, the lords and ladies and whatnot, and kind of evening the playing field. And so they would hand out informational pamphlets and talk about that as being a bad thing. It'll destroy their society. We're on your side. We're trying to, and so they would take up alms, and they made it appear as if they were all in the same society, while secretly manipulating them to take their money to stay aristocracy. And he was saying that that's what these Christianity, which is why he brought up the aesthetic of socialism, and why he's kind of in a harsh light, is he's saying that's what these groups did. The priests controlled the masses.
Yeah. And it doesn't realize, hey, wait a minute, that's exactly what you have done with your ideology.
So yeah, pretty much, it's just a new doctrine, but somebody's in control.
Yeah, meet the new
So that's
boss,
what
same as the old
it
boss.
is, was early forms of socialism, which people say, well, here's, where people started to come up with the idea of socialism and how it was starting to burgeon, but it was really still old feudalism and aristocracy taking over, which would later become the actual bourgeoisie.
Okay.
So that's when it gets to section B of that first reactionary socialism, petty bourgeois socialism.
Yep. Okay.
And you said you had a comment on the second paragraph?
Yeah, so I've got this section highlighted. The individual members of this class, however, are being constantly hurled down into the proletariat by the actions of competition. And as modern industry develops, they even see the moment approaching when they will completely disappear as an independent section of modern society, to be replaced by manufacturers, agriculture, and commerce, by overlookers, bailiffs, and shopmen. And I'm like,
So
wow.
this is kind of stage 2 of what he was talking about
Yeah.
in that one, feudal socialism. This is what they were saying. Hey, we can't morph into this, and it happened anyways. So this is when the bourgeoisie, as he calls them, were basically the ones who were good at making money and opened the shops and became more profitable, and would push the competition down. And that created the upper and lower class, or the new bourgeoisie,
Yeah.
start of the proletariats.
And the point I want to make here is that may have been true temporarily, but we now have a bigger middle class than there has ever been in the history of, whatever.
Yeah.
So there might have been parts of that, petty bourgeoisie that were disappearing during his day and age. There's, yeah, I mean, granted, we keep I talk about like YouTubers and models and musicians and artists and all these people. Like those entire industries could not exist if what he is saying were accurate and true. Like his predictions, oh yeah, eventually they're just gonna get wiped out completely. And I'm like, those are all professions that account for the middle class. Those are all professions that he is saying would be wiped out completely. All the independent small businesses, all the doctors and lawyers and
Contractors.
yeah, I mean there's so many people that fit into that middle ground category, and there are entire industries that did not exist when he was alive. So it's one of those things is he might have saw it shrinking, but that in looking at history, the period of time where those sectors were shrinking, you're talking about like a decade or so, not more than 2 decades where this was occurring, and then after that there's this huge explosion in the middle class.
But what it seems like he's failing to understand is, just as kind of an analogous picture, he's always picturing two groups. There are those on top and those underneath. Those who are being taken advantage of and those who are doing the advantage taking. And the ones at top don't want to move anywhere. So as people start to kind of rise above, they kick them down, or they figure out another way to take advantage, to use them, to take their labor from them, what have you. So it's people trying to rise up and constantly being kicked down, whereas those at the top just stay.
But that's
And
not
yes,
been the
that's
case.
for a while. That's where we get like monarchies and kings and queens and royalty, lords and ladies. That's where that class system came about. There was something like that, but at modern society and what he's talking about with the petty bourgeois socialism, it started to build a middle class, which actually didn't exist. There was no middle class.
Yeah.
Either up here or you're down here. But with the middle class, we now actually have upper middle class and lower middle class.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually 4 tiers, and it turns out people are now cycling through. They're filtering up. The others retire, pass their savings on. Other people build their way up. It's now like flowing like a loop.
Yeah. And so he's
people who can manage at the top, but it's not. That's not the way things work at all in modern society.
And even when he's looking at the historical examples, he's almost kind of cherry picking and using confirmation bias, because even with the aristocrats, the same aristocrats that may have ruled for 50 or 100 years were not the same aristocrats that ruled the previous generations. I mean, empires rose and fell all the time and were replaced by new empires. That there was constantly struggles within the aristocracy. I mean, an aristocracy might hold for a generation or two, possibly even longer. I mean, especially when it comes to the King of England. But even in England, I mean, that's the whole War of the Roses, where there was this huge dispute over who should be the rightful rulers, and cousins and brothers and sisters. I mean, everybody's fighting for that crown, and that's like it's even in his view of those at the top are at the top and they kick everybody down. Even in that system, it's not always the same people that come out on top. There are massive shifts in people coming from, either the low end of that and rising to the top to being in charge. There's also people who came from absolute poverty and took over, like when you're looking at some of the conquerors, like Hannibal came. He's like a random tribal leader, came through and just wrecked the Romans, and he could have taken over the whole thing, and he's like, oh nope, I think they've had enough, and decided to call it a day and go back. Had he actually gone through and conquered, he would have started his own dynasty. Granted, that was probably a bad example, but there are other examples similar to that, especially in China, where there were small tribes who rose up and overthrew the existing empire, and they became the new empire. So, granted, I'm not saying that is a good thing, but I'm saying, according to him, no matter what you do, those are the same people who stay in charge. And it was like, nope, that's constantly rotating throughout history. I guess it all kind of depends on your perspective. Is like, yes, there has always been a ruling class, but that ruling class has, every few generations turns into a completely different set of rulers or set of rulers. So there's the idea that it is a existing system and they will always be in power. Like, well, even given enough time, everything shifts, everything crumbles. Nobody is able to maintain that power structure. All right. So let's see. I don't have anything about the France paragraph here.
Yeah, basically the petty bourgeois socialism.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it's at the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, growing pains. So there was a contraction,
right,
and then an explosion. Yeah.
Of people that was trying to fight against machinery, mass production, stating we need to go back to more simpler times where it is just merchants and smaller shops, not this mass production where everyone's owned or working labor under one person. Or so, because there's two paragraphs near the end where he's talking about what this thought or school of socialism proved, and then what their aim was, which is right after that France paragraph.
Yeah, so I've got what it proved here highlighted, so I'll go ahead and read that section. So it proved incontrovertibly the disastrous effect of machinery and division of labor, the concentration of capital and land in a few hands, overproduction and crises. Or crises? No, it says crises. It pointed out the inevitable ruin of the petty bourgeoisie and peasant, the misery of the proletariat, the anarchy in production, the crying inequalities of the distribution of wealth, the industrial war of extermination between nations, the dissolution of old moral bonds, of the old family relations, and of old nationalities, which it almost sounds...
That's what his goal was, but he's stating this early petty bourgeois socialism was saying, hey, we're losing this.
Yeah.
We're losing the families, we're losing old relations, we're losing this, and all we're getting is a bunch of machineries and bad labor.
Yeah, and the
Money
main reason I've got this highlighted here is this last little bit where he says the dissolution of old moral bonds and family relations and nationalities. He was praising that the section before this, and now it sounds like
no,
he's lamenting that.
these are his words. He's just talking about this brand of socialism.
Yeah, but the way that this is describing it, it sounds like he's saying, "Oh, that was look at all the," because he's talking about
Oh,
the
he starts off that paragraph, this school of socialism, as in the people who were involved with this type of socialism, this is what they felt, not necessarily his views. He's pointing out different schools of thought and quoting from certain
okay.
literature at
All
the time.
right, yeah, okay. So he was okay. Then this was
It's
an error
working
on my
his way
part.
up to basically early forms of socialism, next form of socialism. Here's some documents, what was going on at the time, working his way up to his version of real
Okay.
socialism.
So he isn't lamenting the loss of old moral bonds and family
Correct.
connections. This school of socialism was lamenting the loss of those things.
Correct.
Okay.
They wanted to go more communal
You
and were
gotcha.
afraid of the burgeoning industrial revolution period.
Okay. So then that was my fault in thinking that this was something he was advocating because clearly he doesn't think that any of this is important. He probably agrees with them that overproduction is a problem and ruining of the petty bourgeoisie and the peasants are a problem. Misery of the proletariat and all that sort of stuff. But then this last section, he's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I want. That's a good thing. Standing in line, the bread line. That's a good thing."
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably thinks the last little section of this would be a good thing, but agrees with them at the first little like, "Oh yeah, those are problems. Those are things we need to address." Okay. All right.
So yeah, that's why he's calling this a reactionary type of socialism because it's trying to fight against the industrial revolution or the rise of that
Yeah.
and that type of business.
Okay. All right, and the only other thing I've got on this section as far as what I've highlighted here is the second to last paragraph. It says, "In either case, this is both reactionary and utopian." And I'm just laughing. I'm like, "That's
Well,
your..."
it's of things are changing. It looks like they're getting worse. Families are falling apart. We need to go back to the good old days.
Yeah. And I'm so this is where I'm like, yeah, this is kind of hypocrisy on Marx's part because his is reactionary and utopian, and I'm like, that's you're like, oh yeah, that point of view where they're talking about the old ways are the best ways, and they're just reacting to changes in the climate, and like, that's entirely what this entire manifesto is reactionary and utopian.
Yeah, well, not in his mind. He's thinking it's thought out and planned out based off of the failures of previous types of socialism.
Yeah.
So now you've got a plan that is not reactionary; it is revolutionary, but
Yeah.
it's still working towards a utopian society.
Yeah, and I'm like, how do you not see that? I mean, I guess everybody's blinded by their ideologies, but man, he would
I
say
mean,
this.
this is no different than say Christianity, right? Where you had
Yeah,
the early Christianity, people didn't know what they were doing, so Paul started visiting all the main churches, groups that were set up, writing letters saying, well, to settle this dispute, let's just do this, or you got questions, just do this, and trying to just admonish them. And then as the church grew up, then we got more into like Orthodoxy and the Roman Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, and that kind of held a stranglehold, especially during the Dark Ages. And then that's when Martin Luther nailed his 99 thesis on the door of the church, and we kind of branched off and started getting Protestant versions of Christianity. So it's
yeah,
like each stage of Christianity thinks we've got more answers than the previous stage. We'll learn from the mistakes. We figured out where they were being manipulative, they were breaking things. So he's on the same mindset, but not so much religious wise, just societal wise.
all
But
right,
his ultimate end goal with that is still a few dictating how the rest of society is controlled, but instead of having dynamic ranges and people building themselves up, he just flat. Everyone's equal, and we're going to force it.
all right. And it is 8:50, so I don't think I'm gonna have a time to finish section C here. Just scrolling over that. I mean, granted, the first whole half of that, I don't have anything highlighted, but this is like a page and a half total. So, in order to wrap this up before 9, I think I'm going to call it at C, and we'll pick it back up on C next week.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that'll probably get us back into reactionary and then a good transition into what he calls conservative socialism.
Yeah, so German or true socialism is where we'll pick up next week. To anybody who ends up watching this, thanks for joining me. Hopefully this was entertaining and worthwhile, and not just me pissing into the wind, I guess, or us pissing into the wind.
I tried to avoid that. Bad practice.
Yeah, or I guess shouting into the darkness, maybe a better way of phrasing that. But, yeah. I wish mine's allowed for larger videos to be uploaded, and that's the main holdback on that particular platform, because I think otherwise that platform is doing mostly the right things when it comes to just free speech and running a social media platform. Granted, their architecture still does not enforce freedom of speech. It's only their terms of service. But out of all the social media sites so far, they've been the only ones that have been consistently applying that terms of service. The only downside is you can't upload very long videos, so these long streams sort of thing would have to be broken up into sections, and that's more effort than it's worth. So, but if YouTube ends up axing the channel, I will probably end up moving full-time into BitChute, and hopefully I can start developing something there. But for anybody who enjoys this sort of thing, thank you very much for joining me. And oh, I am sorry, there is somebody in the comments, so I'll address that before axing this. Yeah, sorry about that, Shining Diamond. I was not paying attention to the chat the entire time. Yeah, I would love to debate Destiny. That little, and I can't really make fun of his height because I'm also short, but he is a very abrasive person who pretends to know everything and knows very little. So, I would like to put him in his place, although he probably wouldn't accept defeat even when defeated. Hassan Piker, oh, that's the guy from the Young Turks, right?
You?
Yeah. That's like Chink's nephew or cousin or something like that.
Yeah, he's the guy who said 9/11 was a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I would love to debate anybody on anything, really. I mean, I don't even care if they're small. Like, somebody like that would be a large channel, so it'd be great to kind of, like, hey, I think I've got better ideas, and people listening to your stuff might disagree with you and agree with me, so that would be a chance to actually spread better ideas. Or possibly, if they know more than me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it like that. That would actually be enlightening for me, but... so I think everybody would kind of be benefited by that.
They also depend on who's moderating.
Yeah.
If it's left versus your traditional conservative ideas, there's going to be a lot of butting heads, but there needs to be a good person who can kind of be impartial and allow each side to speak and get discussions moving. So that would also be a key component, I think, on doing a decent debate. Yeah.
I mean, I've debated like smaller channels I'd never heard of and people who don't have any kind of following, like Cult of Ham. Ugh, that guy is annoying to debate because even when he's wrong, he's right, and
I don't know. I thought he was kind of entertaining.
I'm sure it was entertaining for other people. It was very frustrating for me because he does that he does that thing where. We had a conversation, disproved something he said, we move it to the next topic, we move it and continue, and then at the end he says, no, I'm right, because he goes back to his original premise or his original conclusion and acts as if he is correct because his conclusion is correct. I'm like, no, that's the entire. I am debating you on your conclusion. I think your conclusion is incorrect. You cannot use it as support for your current argument. That's the most frustrating thing ever, because it's circular reasoning. It's no, this is true because of my original statement. I'm like, that's what you're trying to support. You cannot use that as a support for your current claim. That's what it always came down to with debates with that guy. Is we'd get to the point where he forgets that is his original, that is what he's trying to defend, and then he's using that as support for his existing claim. And I'm just like, I can't.
I don't know. Maybe it's that he didn't forget. It's that even though, from your perspective, you would have disproved said claim, in his mind, he's like, well, I still think it's true. And so it is still the foundation.
It can't be the foundation. You can't use your conclusion as your foundation, and yet he always did that at the end. Like, and we'd be talking for an hour, and then at the final thing where I'm like, okay, I finally got you pinned to the corner, he's like, oh, nope, you're wrong because my original thing was true. And I'm like, that's what you're trying to defend. You can't use it to support what you're currently saying. But yeah, sorry, Shining Diamond, for not acknowledging you sooner. I was not expecting anybody to join me in here, so I've been ignoring chat for the past several months because nobody ever really shows up. And I guess maybe I should say that in the thing, but yeah, thanks for the comment. I would love to. I'd debate, somebody else who's just kind of in their apartment or their basement or whatever, just to. Because that's how. So even if they don't change their opinion, maybe other people listening would. But
ideas out.
Yeah, but there's that that biblical phrase, "Iron sharpeneth iron," right? So it's that idea is, hey, I think I'm correct on a lot of the things I state, and I have no way of knowing that until they actually get challenged. So even if somebody poorly challenges them, I still walk away with a better perspective on my own views, or, hey, maybe I might actually learn something I didn't know before. So either way, I win, and I think other people involved win. The only person who doesn't win is the person who is defeated and doesn't learn from it.
Don't learn anything.
Yeah. All right. But thank you, and I think on that note, I will call it a stream. So thanks to whoever joined, and thank you, Shining Diamond, for leaving comments. Sorry I didn't get to them sooner, and I will see you next Monday.